Okay, so we're on day 2. If we just take a look at what we found yesterday then, really. We found these 2 exhaust manifolds are leaking, which resulted in 1 stud snap, but by the time I took all of them out, 5 of them had snapped, and interestingly you could see inside. I don't know if we're going to be able to see on this. I don't know if it's going to focus in on it. Probably won't. But it was actually corroded inside, so these studs were just waiting to snap. So we've got 4 snap studs there. There are 5. I'm not quite sure where the other one's gone, but so there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there snap studs we've got to address. We've got this hose here that's leaking underneath with a bit of corrosion on this end, so we've got one of those, and we've got the sump that was leaking. So I've got the sump in, I've ordered these hoses, I've ordered new studs, and I've ordered new nuts. Now the problem is we've got to get these studs out. Now there's 4 ways of getting these studs out. The first one is to put an extractor in and remove it, so that's 1. Second one is to weld a nut on. I've got a MIG welder, so you can weld a nut on and then undo that. That's 2. The third idea is to drill it, hammer a torque fitting in, and then try and unscrew that. And the 4th idea would be, if all that fails, we'll drill it out and put a helicoil in. So we've got 4 options on each one. We've got 5 studs, so we may find we try one of the options on every stud. And then I'm just going to go over there, descale this and paint this. So really, we're on day 2, which is the rebuild. We've got the sump painted, which is over here and looking good. So that's got a coat of hammerite on. Still a little bit tacky, so it's still a bit cold. So I'm just going to clean the sump up tonight and get ready for putting it back on. And if you take a look underneath, you'll see there's the engine with the sump pickup, the crank with the counterweights, and the con rods are just a bit further up there. So we're just going to give that a good clean up all these surfaces where the mating gaskets go, and then we can start to get the sump back on. And there we go. Right, I tried the first option, which was basically trying to drill it, put a torque fitting in, tap it and undo it, but it was just too stuck in there. I think it's corroded in, so that's not worked, and it's slightly, I didn't drill it spot on, it's now slightly off centre, so I can see I've got thread at the bottom and clear aluminium at the top. Now luckily the holes in the manifold are a 10mm hole, where these are 8mm studs, so it will allow for a little bit of variation, luckily for me. But what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to buy a helicoil kit for that one, drill it out slightly larger, put a helicoil in and put an insert in. So what I'm going to try now is welding, and that's the weld you can hear in the background. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and build up some weld, because it's probably maybe 3mm deep where it's actually snapped the stud. Build some weld up in there, and then try to weld a nut onto it. What I'm actually looking for is just a screwdriver to try and clean the inside of this as best as I can, to try and get good penetration with the weld in there, because that is going to have to weld really well, and I've probably got one shot at it really of a good weld. So I'm going to try and build it up, then take the stud, hold the stud on like that, weld that on. If I can just zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to try and weld in there, get that in there, fill it full of weld, and then undo it with a socket. That is the theory. Wish me luck. So last night didn't quite go as well as planned, which is not a problem, because you do have these days when it fights you, but you can tell it's not gone too well when you look at all the tools I've got out. I've got my welder out, gas torch, lights, nearly every tool out of my toolbox, and look, it's gone to a 2 brew job. So it is serious, very serious. I started off by cleaning the sump up. That was quite pleasant, scraping a gasket above your head with bits falling in your eyes and in your hair. That was delightful. So I've done that, that's cleaned off. The sump is now painted and over there, ready to go on, so we'll do that tonight. But I thought I'd have a go at getting these studs out, and basically wished I hadn't bothered. Because, if you remember, I said to you there was a number of options we could try. The first one was drilling. Well, the drilling didn't go too well, and it never does really, to be honest, because the stud snaps. If I can find a stud for you, I'll show you, and it never snaps clean. Gonna snap there. It's probably not going to focus. It's going to want to focus on me, not this. The stud snaps. The stud snaps here, and it's never a clean snap. It's never a clean break. So you're trying to centre pot it and drill it in the middle, and inevitably you drill to one side, and then inevitably you snap a drill. Then you can't get the drill out. So that's exactly what happened. So with this stud here, it snapped. Now luckily for me, these are 8mm studs, and the holes in the exhaust manifold are sort of a 9 or a 10mm hole, so there's a bit of play. So what I'm going to have to do with this one, because it's slightly offset, you can't really see in it here too well. There's a bit of thread this side and a bit of aluminium this side. Steel, the steel stud still. I'm going to have to drill it out a bit bigger, helicoil it, and fix that with a helicoil, which I don't want to do on all of them. This one I got out. Basically what I did is I welded a nut like this. I welded a nut onto it, onto the stud. I managed to then undo it. Now you can see they've gone in quite a way, so I've got one out, good. I've got one, helicoil, 2, 3 to go. So what I'm going to do tonight is get the sump on, because I also made a bit of an error that I'm drilling up here. I've got filings falling down here and I haven't got a sump on. Okay, they're dropping down and it's covered, but it's not the best thing to do. So what a difference a day makes, they say. A bit of a rethink. I'll have a bit of a coffee. Let's get cleaned up. Let's just pick all these tools up. There's just stuff everywhere. Try and get a bit of working room, and let's get the sump sealant on, get the sump screwed up, and then see if we can weld one of these studs, and I'll show you how I got one of the studs out. So oh, and something else that's happened. The studs have arrived. These are here. So we've got copper washers for the exhaust studs and the studs themselves. Now all that there, 25 nuts, not that I need 25 nuts, and 8 studs came to £8.90. So if you do need to do this job yourself, which apparently it's quite common these studs to snap, it's not a very expensive job. Just requires a lot of coffee, a lot of swearing, and time. So these are the replacement studs I've ordered. So they're 41mm long. They were something like £3.60 for them. There's one of the originals. There's a replacement. So you can see. So you can see they are the same. So I'm going to replace all of them, and as I think I said to you yesterday, even though 5, I found one had snapped when I looked at it. When I went to undo it, 3 more snapped, so I've got 4 snapped. That left me 3 studs in the head. I then thought, you know what, if I'm replacing 5 studs, I might as well replace 8 studs, and for the cost of them, it's worth it. And that's when the 5th one snapped. So I'm glad I did, because if I hadn't, I'd have been getting it all back together, put the nut back on, and I torqued it up and snapped another stud off. So I have saved myself there. And I've got these new studs to go in. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we will be on the mend tonight. So let's get that sump cleaned up, ready to go on, get some tools cleaned up round here, and I'll show you putting the sump on, which is fairly an easy job. I've just took an extra chassis leg off actually on the other side, which was just 3 bolts to take off, which made it easier, so the sump will just go straight up rather than jiggling up. And you know, if it's jiggling up, you're just going to get sealant smudged everywhere and make a right mess of it, get it all over yourself, and you just get angry with yourself and throw it on the floor in disgust. So at least now the theory is, do a test fit, make sure you can get it up and down, put some sealant round, put it up, put the 10 bolts in and the 4 screws, 4 nuts in the corner, leave it for 24 hours, final nip them all up, sump done. The steel pipe hose is on order and that's coming. Studs have come, so I'm waiting for the exhaust gasket and the pipe. So there we go, all the bolts in place. So we've got the bolts in place there for the sump. Hopefully that's looking better. You can see where some of the seam sealer is just squidged out along there, so I'll leave that to set and go off. So I'm going to move on to the studs now. This one I got out yesterday by welding a larger nut onto the remaining stud. This one I tried but it snapped off, and I've got this one to go. That's going to need helicoiling. So out of these 4, I've got one good one. Now what I was finding is where this is snapped, there's probably got a bit of soot or dirt in there, and I'm not getting a good penetration on the weld. So what I'm going to do is just drill the surface of it out, just to get a bit of bite in there. This cardboard's just to stop the crap falling down onto the sump gasket sealant below. So what I'm going to do is just drill this just to get a bit of bite, so the weld will get onto some good decent new metal. Right, so what I'm going to do now is build the weld up in there just so it protrudes out. The weld's not going to stick to the aluminium. It may mark it a little bit, but it's not going to stick to the aluminium. So I'm going to put my welder on here, connect into the head, going to blob a weld on there, blob a weld on there, put a nut on top, let them cool and see what we can do. So let's just get the welder set up. What I didn't realise in my haste to get these welded is that I didn't get the camera rolling, so you've missed that. But basically what I did is I drilled the stud out slightly, built the weld up on there without the nut in place just to get it to stick proud of the head, then put this larger nut on which I explained to give the clearance to get the puddle of welding, and then fill the welding. Now these have been welded maybe 5 minutes ago and they are cold now, so I'm going to have a go at cracking those off. So this really is heart in your mouth moment where it's either going to go or not go. So we'll just see if we can get these out. It's either going to twist off and snap off and I'll curse, or we'll start to see the stud move. Now that's come off, so that's a shame, that hasn't worked. And you can see where the weld, it hasn't picked up on there, so I'm going to have to have another go at that one. So this is what happens. It is a bit hit and miss. So let's try the one above, see if we had more success with this one. No, that one's gone as well. Right, okay. Let's, well, what can we do? Got to do it again, haven't we? Maybe it didn't work because I wasn't filming it. I don't know. Right, so we'll allow those to cool. Just make sure the socket will still fit over the shape of the nut. Yeah, that's good. So we'll just allow those to cool for about 5-10 minutes and then we'll give them another go, see what we can do. I think it'd be fair to say I'm struggling with this screw a little bit. I've got quite a few failed attempts here of welding on nuts. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 attempts. The other night, I think basically I'm just not getting the weld penetration onto the broken stud before I then weld the nut on, and it's just shearing straight off. I think maybe the heat is just getting sucked out of it with the head. So what I might do is try and warm the head up a little bit just to take that initial coldness away and then tack welding in. So I've got 2 I've stood on here. We have had gasket arrive. Got the oil pipe, coolant pipe I should say. New coolant pipe. So I've got that. So that's going to go there like that. I've got a helicoil kit for the stud that I have to drill out. So let's see if we can get these undone. No, fail. Try this one. Ooh, this one could be turning. Ah, moved a bit and then snapped. Ah. Right, let's carry on and repeat the process and see what we can do. I think this one's going to come out. It feels like it's moving. Oh, it is coming out. Oh, yes! Look at that. Oh, come on. Look at that there. It's come out. Yes, yes. Right, so just while these nuts are cooling down again to try and see if I get them to break, I just decided I'll get this pipe off. So I've taken this corroded pipe off. Now it was actually leaking from the O-ring where it goes into the pump here, but you can actually see the pipe there is pretty corroded anyway, so it was only probably not far off going through anyway. So taking this pipe out from here, then decided I'll get in, give it all a good degrease, descale the rust off it, and give it a coat of paint. And I've also come to the conclusion, considering I've had no evidence in a receipt or what I've seen that it's ever been serviced in its life, even though it's only one owner from new, and it's done 90,000 miles, I'm going to put a new cam belt and water pump on it. It's just a safeguard. It's okay, it's another £50, it's not much, but I think it's just worthwhile to do at this stage. You don't want to have gone this far and then find something else goes and fails on me. So let's get all this cleaned off. Have another go at cracking those nuts off, and if they fail, weld more on, keep going till we get them out. Right, I think I'm losing count of how many studs I've welded in here now. So I've just welded 2 more nuts on, let them cool down. I'm going to see if this one will undo. It feels like it's moving. Just need to crack it off. Well, it's still rotating. Still rotating. Oh, ratchet's got me away. Come on. Come on. Hold. It's moving. It's moving. Oh. Oh, what a relief. That is out. That is another one out. One to go. Yes! So finally got all 8 studs in. That was a bit difficult, but there we go. All 8 studs in. Block cleaned up. I'm going to paint that before we put the new hose in. So got the block painted, got the new radiator hose on here, that's going into the water pump, new oil filter on, just got to get the exhaust on, and then we're done. So I put some assembly paste on the bottom, put the manifold in, had to actually drill and retap all these as well, they'd all stripped. So we start to put the manifold back on now. So we're finished for this episode of Vintage Steel. What we've done, we've solved 3 things. We've replaced the sump that was corroded, we replaced a water hose that was corroded and starting to leak, and we've done a 3rd thing. What did we do? Oh yeah, exhaust manifold. That was the whole thing where we started, because it had a misfire, and that's because it was sucking in air through the exhaust and the oxygen sensor was getting a misreading. So we saw that exhaust manifold that was split, that gasket. So there's exhaust manifold gasket, sump and the water pump. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually leave it like that. So I'm not going to run it up this episode, because what I want to do now is move on to, as we sort of realising with this car, it's never been serviced, so I want to change this cam belt. That's going to be an interesting one to have a look at what the condition of the cam belt is like. So we've got a new cam belt here, and we've got a new water pump. It just comes as part of the kit. It's not a bad value. It's basically £50. Comes with a new water pump and a new tensioner for the cam belt, so it's not bad really. It should have been done probably at 60,000 miles. The engine's now at 90,000 miles, so it's way overdue. So that is it for this episode. Please like and subscribe. We'll have at least one more episode with the cam belt change, maybe one more episode when it's up and running, hand it over to my daughter, and then that's her first car, who she still actually hasn't seen it. Okay, thanks for watching, bye.